My friends, I have a question for you this morning. Big shocker there, right? How many of you have ever been to or explored the Amazon? Anyone? Oh, okay, one right there. Well, I would think it would be so much higher because I do it from my recliner and I use my phone, you know? And in one such exploration, I found a really beautiful depiction of our gospel today, and I had it hanging at the front office at Christ the King, my old parish, and it was a very unique perspective. It was a painting full of blues and turquoise. You see like little things that look like bubbles. You see this distorted image of Jesus and this sharp image of a hand reaching through the water like he's grabbing for something. And it's the perspective of St. Peter looking up and seeing the hand of Jesus after he started sinking into the water. It's a beautiful picture, and I think it really captures the humanity of Peter. Because this gospel passage, it shows his impulsiveness and his inconsistency. Two characteristics that really make St. Peter very relatable. So this gospel passage, it takes place, we think, around 3 o'clock in the morning. And the apostles, they're battling against this stormy sea, and then we are told that Jesus comes walking across the water towards the boat. And we are told that the apostles are scared stiff. Why are they scared stiff? Who said ghost? There you go, right? It's a ghost. Right? Imagine that moment, right? Can any of you walk on water? Anyone? No? In Canada. Well, when it's frozen. That's ice, Deacon. That's not water. All right? They thought it was a ghost. And so in that moment, in their fright, even the resurgence of Jesus doesn't dispel this fear. And so we have St. Peter. He takes matters into his own hands and he challenges this ghost to do something that only Christ can do. Well, if you really are Jesus, allow me to walk on the water. And he does. But St. Peter, he only does for a few steps. And then Peter, he takes his eyes off of Jesus. He looks around the waves of the storm. He hears the noise, and he starts to sink. But as long as Peter kept his eyes on Jesus, he was able to walk unhindered through the stormy sea. And yet, as soon as his eyes wandered away from Jesus to examine these intimidating waves, he began to sink. Do you think this is why he's called the Rock? Anyone? Peter the Rock? Sink like a stone, right? Just so, my friends, as we make our ways through the stormy temptations and challenges of life in this fallen world, only by focusing on Christ do we remain afloat. Christ is always close to us in our storms. He is always asking us to believe in him. And in his words to St. Peter, tinged with disappointment, we see how much he longs for us to trust him. Why did you doubt? Do you think that's a very relatable moment in your life of faith? We've all been there, right? We've all had these moments of doubt. Why did you doubt? And as soon as Jesus steps into the boat, the storm gives way to peace and calm. And so we can say that Jesus, he wants to be that peace and calm in our lives. He wants to be that strength. He wants to be that solution to the storms of life. Now, obviously, St. Peter, he didn't learn this lesson right away, but he eventually learned it throughout the course of his life. And in his first letter, he puts it like this. He says, quote, "Cast all your anxieties on him, for he cares about you." Now, I'm not a fan of tattoos, but if you're going to get a tattoo, I recommend this verse. Cast all your anxieties on him, for he cares about you. And for those of you who want to find it, it's 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7. Can we cast our anxieties on Christ? Do we believe that he cares about us? Why do you doubt? Now, friends, having faith in Christ doesn't mean that we will always understand everything that happens in life, right? You know, I've shared with you my cancer journey, right? I don't know how I got it. I have it. I don't think it came from God, you know. But it does mean that we always know who we are and where we are going, you know. I don't want to sound macabre, but if he calls me home on Wednesday, I'm okay with that. You know, I think I'm going to be around for a long, long time. I really, really do. But I was anointed last night, you know. And this is the priceless value of the gift of faith. You know, I'm in the middle of a storm right now, and I'm hanging on to Jesus. You know, there's a story about a man who was very accustomed to giving orders and having his own way. Let's say he was a retired Army general or something. And one day he was traveling to a very important meeting, and he decided to take a shortcut, and he found himself being very, very lost. And the first person he bumps into was a young child, and he asks this child for directions. He says, "Excuse me, boy, do you know the way to Henderson, Nevada?" And the little kid responds, he's like, I don't know where that is. And the old man, he demands, "Well then, how far to Boulder City?" And this little kid, he's like, "I don't know that one either." And then he asks, "Is there someone around here who can give me directions then?" The little kid, he just shrugs and says, "I don't know." And then the man's questions got angrier as the boy kept responding with this same answer, "I don't know." And finally, the man, he loses his temper and he shouts, he says, "Well, you don't know much then, do you?" And then for the first little time, the little boy smiles and he looks up the winding road up to his little house, lit by the evening light, where his brother and sister are playing in the yard. And the little boy says, "No, but I'm not lost." As Christians, we don't necessarily have all the answers to life's problems. But the more we study, the more we dive into our faith, the more we will find answers to some of these hard questions. And we know that if we stay focused on Christ, if we stay close to him, we do have the answer that matters most. We know that we are children of God, and we know that his love is all-powerful and is always watching over us, even during life's storms. But my friends, we know through experience that we can still get lost. And so I think rightly so, the underpinnings of our gospel today is to ask ourselves, how do we stay focused on Christ? You know, Peter, he could look directly into the eyes of Christ, as easily as I can see each and every one of you. We can't do that. Not until the day of judgment and that moment when we hope to see him smiling at us and welcoming us home, you know, after we carry these crosses here on earth. But in the meantime, dear friends, we can keep an eye on him in a very unique way. And it's not just symbolically. Any guesses? Anyone? Anyone? Holy Communion, right? Jesus himself has provided us this real focal point for our life. He has made himself truly present, body, blood, soul, divinity, in the gift that is the Eucharist, right? the ever-present safe harbor for our souls. And so when we receive Holy Communion, when we gaze upon him in the host during the Mass, we are doing what Peter did as he stepped out of that fishing boat, fixing our gaze on Christ the Lord, whose love and grace and stability he gives us in life's storms. And so, dear friends, let's promise him that we will never let a day go by without fixing our gaze on him. And let's remember this moment in the midst of life's storms, that he can guide us and that he will always be there reaching out when we start to sink.